Beautiful. And Linda, I turn this over to you. Unmute, please.
Did we want to play a song before I get started? I think that would be really good.
Absolutely. I just didn't know if you wanted to welcome everyone. So, okay, dear friends, we are going to share a song that I know from someone whom I know many of you all know and love. And perhaps you'll be able to relate to the beginning and then move into some hope in the middle. Here we go.
On a day like any other, gray clouds in the sky, I went for a walk trying to forget the emptiness inside. But with every step I took, I saw the gaze of many more, lost in their own thoughts of hopelessness, not knowing where to turn anymore. So I walked and walked, trying desperately to leave it all behind, when I came across a youth whose words still linger in my mind.
Youth can move the world. 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 Living in an age consumed by self-interest, with injustice as far as the eye can see. We must be firm.
I'm not gonna try to eat it
Firm as a rock. By day and by night, we must labor ceaselessly while singing. Youth can move the world. 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 To every generation, a moment comes, the opportunity of a lifetime to contribute to the fortunes of humanity. And if we pause to reflect, you will see the moment has come, the time is here. We must commit, forget all of our fears, look not at each other's shortcomings and think not of our own. Pass by all inequities, however they are shown. Must read it from the heart, help each other grow, and live a life of service from which blessings will flow.
If you want to see the rest of the song, you got to stay till the end.
And I would like to welcome
Can I ask everybody to mute, please? Everybody should be on mute, please.
Yeah, yes, please, because we can hear talking in the background. Thank you, Tommy. That was helpful. Friends, first of all, I want to thank Shukufeb for this invitation, and to Dara for doing this with me. You know, this is a Baha'i devotional and discussion, and I wanted to share with you my own background as a Baha'i and how it led to my brother, my husband, Dan, my brother, John, and I actually developing this project, the Virtues Project, because tonight, what we're going to do is share some strategies with you, some tools to help you reach out to the youth in your life. They're really tools that are good for any relationship, but our youth are living through these very challenging times at a time in their lives when they need each other. They need to be cultivating those relationships, and they're suffering from isolation. They're wondering, is there a future for them? What kind of a future will they have? So how can we help to give them meaning, joy, and purpose in their lives? So before I begin, we have some questions, Dara, that we were going to ask them to respond to.
Absolutely. So, dear friends, in the chat box, please type what you hope that we will talk about this evening with regard to youth and transformation. What's your biggest hope for our time together with our talk, focusing on youth and transformation? I'll just give you a minute to pop that in the chat box. Put a little music on. How to help young people connect and stay connected to the core of who they are, to get some strategies to support youth with transformation. At what age do you see most transformation? The language to use to reach the youth. Practical skills for encouraging them to be of service to others. How to empower youth and children. How to apply the virtues in everyday actions. How to facilitate self-worth in youth. And strategies to give youth confidence in themselves for their future. Ways to help young people and get them to reach the goal of adulthood. And helping young people cope with stress, depression, and anxiety. And strategies for applying virtues work to youth. And what can I do? How can we help young people engage in the importance of developing virtues? Such thoughtful questions.
Well, I really appreciate those very discerning questions, and you're right, exactly in the place where we were hoping to respond to that. So let me share a little bit about the history of the Virtues Project. It's actually a global grassroots movement that started 30 years ago and is still very much alive in over 120 countries. And the way it began was that my brother, John Cavillon, who was at the time a Disney Imagineer with Disneyland, the Disney company, Dan, who was a pediatric clinical psychologist, a child psychologist, and I at the time was the spiritual care director of hospice in Victoria, British Columbia. But my background was as a psychotherapist in community mental health. And in that role, and also in my private practice, my primary focus was suicide prevention amongst the youth, because I saw that as a major, major problem. So John had come to visit in Victoria from LA, and we were having brunch on the last day of his visit. And what came up was John said, you know, I wish I could be of more direct service to humanity. Dan and I, every year with our children, would choose a service project because as Baha'is, we learned that the purpose of life, yes, it's to acquire virtues, and it's also to be a world citizen and to be of service. In fact, service is considered prayer. And so we set out to answer some questions that we had. We were talking about the fact that the two leading causes of death of youth aged 12 to 24 are murder, sometimes by other youth, and suicide. That has not changed in 30 years. I'm very sad to say. And we thought, what can anybody do? Someone should do something about that. And we looked at each other and said, let's do it. And on that sense of intention and mission, John left Disney for several years and came to work with us to create the Virtues Project. The way it started to form was, we thought, okay, we knew that young people who had been doing senseless acts of violence, like drive-by shootings, they would shoot a child off a bike, they didn't even know him, and kill him. Now, what is that? So one time when they had caught some of these young people that had done this, they said, what was in your mind? What was the reason you would even think of killing someone you don't even know? And they said, we were bored. Now that level of boredom is a disease of meaninglessness. And one of the core virtues, the very core virtue that youth are created to develop, is idealism. What is my place in the world? How can I make a difference? What is the mark that I will make? And we thought, how can we help children and youth understand that their lives have a purpose and a meaning? We thought, well, what's the meaning of life? Where do you look for that? So we spent a summer, we called it our summer of discernment. And we were in a little cottage in British Columbia, in Victoria. And what came to us was that Dan was a scholar in the world's sacred texts: Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Baha'i, Krishna, all of these different holy books. And we also knew the stories of the oral traditions of indigenous people. So that was the most amazing defining moment for us when we realized, as we looked into all these holy books, all the world's wisdom traditions describe the meaning of life as the virtues: love, justice, kindness, compassion, purposefulness, excellence, joy. These are become the silver thread of unity amongst all religions, all cultures, all people on the face of this earth. And it was this huge moment of illumination. And that's how it started. If you want later, I can tell you a few more stories about it, but I'd really like to get into, what does the Virtues Project offer to you with those wonderful discerning questions? How do we show these children who they are? We're living in extremely challenging times, not only because of COVID, not only because of the dire climate situation, but because our children have become addicted to electronics. I think we all have to some extent. And so we need to make extra efforts to help them connect with their own souls. And so how do we do that? Dara, I'm going to turn that over to you to share.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda. So, friends, how many of you all are familiar with the 5 strategies of the Virtues Project? I know many of you are, right? Thank you. And who is not? Who's hearing the 5 strategies for the first time? Okay, wonderful. So, as Linda shared, to give you the history of the project and how it started, well, how do you actualize it? Put it into action. There are 5 strategies, simple strategies for bringing out the best in ourselves and others. And yes, we're focused on youth, and we all have an inner teenager or an inner child in us. So please know that what I'm about to share and what we're going to share this evening is not just for the youth, it's also for us, and it's never too late. So the first strategy of the Virtues Project is speaking the language of virtues. It's being really mindful and intentional to see the virtue, name it and give the success criteria or the evidence. So when a child is listening to you, or a youth is doing what you've asked the first time, acknowledge it, right? Thank you for your cooperation, doing as I've asked the first time, the virtue and the evidence. That's just the beginning of the first strategy. The second strategy is recognizing teachable moments. So instead of shaming and blaming, it's naming and reframing. And I actually heard on a podcast today about adolescence and the brain, right? And we know that our brains are malleable, which means they change. And so regardless of the messages that were told to people when they were younger, even when they are adolescents, we can use the language of virtues, and we can also invite them back to their higher selves when they've made a mistaken behavior. So with teachable moments, right, it is not saying that somebody is stubborn, but what's the virtue of stubbornness? Put in the chat box. Anybody know? I know you know. It's determination. And right, and energetically, it's very different, and it sends a message to the heart in a very different way. The third strategy is so incredibly timely. And remember, the founders came up with this 30 years ago. It is setting clear boundaries based on restorative justice. And if we look at the injustices in the world, and we look at people whose voices have not been heard, and spaces where there has been perhaps unearned power and privilege, restorative justice helps to put the focus on relationships, right? And instead of who did it and what was the rule that was broken, it's how was a relationship harmed and what needs to happen to make things right. And it's doing it from a virtues-based perspective. It's also about working with people instead of doing things to people. So it's a whole new, somewhat new paradigm shift about leadership. Paradigm shift about leadership. And our youth are really passionate about that.
Sarah, I want to say one thing before you move on. You're on a roll here.
Please.
That's really helpful. I want to say that one of the key points in the Virtues Project about boundaries and youth is that authority should always be used in service of a child's learning. It is not about you being the power and having authority over them. It is you being their educator. And I'm thinking particularly of junior youth classes, children's classes that I know many of you are involved with. Sometimes there are no boundaries. When I've talked with other teachers, because I have a children's class here on Lanai, we have a little adorable little group of multi-ethnic kids. And the first thing we did in the very first session was, how do we want to treat each other in our class? So it's very important to practically set some boundaries. You know, at the most simple level, it is, how do we want to treat each other? What's our class promise? Or what are the rules we have? And every time an agreement is broken or a boundary is broken, there have to be consequences, but they should be educative, not punitive. So we went around all over the South Pacific, I'm thinking of, and all the schools had a naughty chair. And we campaigned for a courtesy chair or a peace chair. And so now those schools have a little corner with pillows, with books, with Play-Doh that kids can rub and, you know, and the teacher comes to them and says, are you ready to be peaceful now? Yes. This is their help corner, their peace corner. So it's completely shifting from you are bad when you do that to how can you be good? How can you do the right thing? How can you have been kind instead of what you did with your brother? How could you have said that kindly? How could you have handled your anger with peacefulness and self-discipline? So carry on Dara?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Linda. That's really helpful. And this third strategy is really powerful. It's about having a backbone. So everybody put your right arm up, right? When we think about what Linda shared, this is about support, right? And this is about not control, but it's really authority. And then the left arm is underneath, and that's about encouragement. And so we need both. So you can relax, and that's being in the educative box, in the with box, instead of doing things to or for or not. And then the fourth strategy is honoring the spirit. That's what gives meaning and purpose, right? It can be devotionals, it could be prayer, it's being with friends. If we think about our youth, it can be school spirit, music, arts, service, service learning, servant leadership. What are some things that honor your spirits? Perhaps you put them in the chat box, or think about what really honors youth spirit. Gathering together, using their idealism in a positive way honors their spirit. And if we don't give them that opportunity in a positive way to tap into their idealism, that's when challenges can absolutely arise.
You know, I want to share a couple of projects in New Zealand that were incredibly powerful for young women who had been sexually abused and young men who had been abused, had been come out of prison. These were young kids. And it was called the Standing Strong program. And it was taught by two fabulous master facilitators of the Virtues Project. The women, the young women, did the most incredible art. They put their feelings and their virtues into art. The young men learned their own Maori culture. They made their own spear, and that was their, what virtue do I stand for? In many, many of the schools that you go to in Australia and New Zealand that have taken the Virtues Project on board, you'll see visuals when you first walk into the school. You'll see a big vaka, a boat. And in the boat are the pictures of all the kids in the school, and each one of them has an oar. And on the oar is written their core virtue. Then you go, you look beside it, and you see the teachers and the principal, the headmistress or the headmaster, writing, this is my strength virtue. This is my growth virtue. I'm working on this. So there's the modeling of a humble posture of learning about one's own virtues. And when I have gone to these schools that are so successful, that have just turned almost a criminal school into one of the highest functioning, both academically and socially, I've said, what allowed you to do this? How did this happen? And the teacher said, we took it into our hearts first because we needed it. Then we could share it with the children. You cannot give a child something you don't have. And so if you are not honoring your own spirit with your own routine of reverence, there will not be reverence in the family. I didn't mean to put it in the negative, but the more you practice reverence, the more you can share that. And children are natural mystics. They love things like pulling a virtues card from the pack and seeing what's my virtue for today. They are amazing at meditation. So there are many practices we talk about in different books that I've written about that. So let's carry on, Dara. Thank you for your flexibility.
We do. This is how we honor our spirits. We do this dance, and we're happy that you all are dancing with us. And so speaking of dancing and flexibility, Tina June, if you would please uplift actually quote number 3. I know I keep changing on you in the chat box. And friends, please know that I've put a handout in the chat box for you to double click and save. I can put it again, but it has some of the quotes and virtue and a list of the virtues. So Tina, if you would please read quote number 3.
First, every child is potentially the light of the world, and at the same time, its darkness. Wherefore must the question of education be accounted as a primary importance. Selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha.
Thank you for your helpful service reading that. And so we can use that quote for the second strategy of teachable moments and anywhere throughout our service to these young people. And Linda, please jump in. Did you want to add anything?
I'd like to add something else that is in the Baha'i teachings about that very phrase, because Abdu'l-Baha said, the way you treat a child is extremely powerful, because if a child has very high energy, the way if you vilify them about it, it will turn into greed, or it will turn into defiant behavior. But if you rename it as, you've got so much enthusiasm, look at that enthusiasm. So the darkness and the light are both possible, but so much depends on how you mentor them. And it's really important to be a mentor instead of a tormentor. You know, because we have so much power over these little children who do not know who they are until we hold up a mirror and show them. Dear, I think before, that's such a great quote. I think I'd like to share one of their stories about the Seattle jail before we go on to the companioning piece. One of the times that I was asked by a chaplain to come into the Seattle Detention Center. It was really a prison, I'm telling you, clanging doors and everything. And she wanted me to see the young women that were in that detention center, awaiting trial, most of them. And this was part of one of our first clients was the Greater Seattle Interfaith Council. Can I ask everybody to mute again? Because I'm still hearing noises in the background. Thank you. Most of you are muted, and maybe Martha could mute. Thank you. Okay, so the chaplain brought me in, and we had to be, we had to be searched. We had to put our things away, and we go through all these clanging doors, and we come into an open space, and all these young women are behind bars, literally. All of a sudden, the doors clang open and they come out. Some of them, sort of willing, and some of them like rolling their eyes. What do we have to do today? And we had a virtue sharing circle. And it was the first time, according to the guard that was watching us, that some of these girls had actually spoken to everybody else. And what they did was they each chose a virtue and talked about what it meant in their lives. And I had the virtues poster up on a flip chart. And I said, my purpose here today, I only have a little bit of time with you, but I wanted to introduce you to someone really important. They're like, I said, it's you. Do you know who you are? You have all these things inside of you. And every time you practice them, they become yours more and more. So at the end, I always cry when I tell this because it was so meaningful to me. This little African-American girl with little braids. I mean, they were every shade of the rainbow, these kids. This little tiny 12-year-old who had to shoot someone, kill somebody to join a gang so she could be protected on those streets. She came up to me and she said, I want to thank you today, Miss Linda, because I never knew who I was before. And I didn't know what kind of lifestyle I was going to have after I get out of here. She said, now I know what I can do because these belong to us, right? Like you said. And I gave her a hug and I thought, I would just like to take her home with me, but it was more important that I gave her that awareness. And even the children raised in very wealthy homes, in perfectly happy homes, they need to hear who they are. And that's why the language of virtues is so powerful. We need to use it not only when we're acknowledging them, but when we're correcting them. You need to use your kindness. It's time for some self-discipline. Everybody's being helpful now. It's a language that we need all the time in every relationship, as far as I'm concerned, because it's a way to acknowledge, to correct, and to thank. So, Dara and I both have, and I'm sure all the facilitators that are here, because I know there are quite a few, have all these stories of the powerful effect this has on young people. And I have seen that all over the world. And as Dan and I have traveled the world, I've seen that effect. How's our time doing? Okay.
Beautiful. So I want to pop in one other quote. We have a couple more. And Gita, would you please?
Absolutely.
Thank you, dear.
There must be the mentor, therefore, must the mentor be a doctor as well? That is, he must, in instructing the child, remedy its faults, must give him learning, and at the same time rear him to have a spiritual nature. Let the teacher be a doctor to the character of the child. Thus he heal the spiritual ailments of the children of men.
Thank you for your helpful service. And did you want to share anything related to the quote?
Dara, why don't you share about companioning, and then maybe we'll tell about Pocatello.
Absolutely. So the fifth strategy, as many of you know, is called the companioning process. But before I tell you very briefly what it is, have you ever tried to give unsolicited advice to youth? And how did that work for you? Please, thank you for your self-discipline staying muted. It doesn't work, right? They don't need us telling them what to do. They just need us to be curious. And this is the companioning process. Open the door with a question, what's happening? Even if we know what's happening, right? And it's a 7-step counseling technique that Linda discovered when she was working as a spiritual caregiver in hospice. So I want to quickly go over these 7 steps because they are powerful. And then I'll give you the shortcut if you can't remember all 7. So when somebody comes to you, however they are, really upset or really excited, you just open the door and say, what's happening? And then you take the key, lock your lips, and you listen with receptive silence. That's the second step. The third step is you ask cup emptying questions, which is reflective listening. You're basically kind of repeating what they have to say in the form of a question. And then the fourth step is you're noticing sensory cues. What can you see? If they are welling up with tears, don't say, why are you crying? Has anyone ever said that to you? Do you know why? It puts you on the defensive, right? Maybe you don't know. But when you ask, what are those tears for? It gives permission to feel and just let the tears flow. And then the fifth step is to ask virtues reflection questions. What virtue will help you now? And if they don't know all the virtues, you can offer a virtue or two. And if you offer the wrong one, they'll let you know that was the wrong one, and they'll find the right one. And then the sixth step is to ask them closure and integration questions. Something like, what's clearer to you now, or what has been helpful? When we ask what's clearer, what's helpful, starting with what, not the why, it helps them to start think and process and hopefully realize that they have come to their own solution. And then finally, the 7th step is to offer a virtues acknowledgement. You know what, sweetie, I really appreciate your honesty coming to share with me what happened. And if all 7 steps are too much for you to remember, just go open the door. I'm thinking my friend Betsy Laddle Smith is on here with the key. Open the door and say, what's happening? Close, listen. And when they're done, offer a virtues acknowledgement. And that's going to have them come back to you. And I do want to share my own story. So when my daughter was in 9th grade, I didn't realize this at the time. She was pulling away from me, pulling away, because that's what adolescents do. Or else they would live with us for the rest of their lives or our lives, right? And so we were just getting into it. And I did something that I'm not proud of, and I'm not going to say what I said to her, but she locked herself in the bathroom and banging. And then I realized that she really was just pulling away from me, that she needed her independence, really interdependence. And we had some conversations, and I stopped giving her unsolicited advice. And then she came to me for more advice. And here's the kicker. When she was a graduating senior, she was the captain of the Pommy squad, the dance team. Their coach quit, and she asked me, her mother, to be the coach. Who wants their mommy around when you're a senior in high school, right? We were living the 5 strategies at home, and Danny coached or led as the captain of 5 strategies. And there were beautiful things that happened for these young women. And so when they graduated, they all wanted sets of virtues cards. And my son, who followed 3 years later, what did he want to give all of his friends for graduation? The virtues cards. And the last point, and then thank you, Linda, for your patience. When our son Jake was in 11th grade, he realized that he probably wasn't going to get into the University of Maryland. He hadn't been focused, and that was his number one choice. I experienced a lot of trauma growing up, and so did my children. And so when Jake had this realization, he took the self-discipline virtues card and he put it as wallpaper on his phone. So he looked at it every day. He then took 7 APs the next year. He made honor roll his first year, and he's applying to med school now. And so if you knew Jake all over the place with executive functioning and everything, this works. These strategies work for all of us. And we can companion ourselves as Jake did, coming to that realization. So Lynn, before you continue with your story, we have one more quote. Is there someone who would be helpful that has the handouts that would just read the last quote on the bottom of the page, please? Yes, Randy, thank you for your helpful service.
All right, to unmute, and then I lost the quote. Okay, it's coming back. May you always listen, always hear, always speak with the power of the Spirit. Abdul Baha.
Thank you for your helpful service reading that. So Linda,
That's what the essence of companioning is. It's listening and hearing with the power of the Spirit. I was talking with a friend earlier today about a relative, 2 relatives, a daughter and a mother, who were in a horrible power struggle. And the daughter was saying terrible things to the mother. And my friend said, what can the mother do? And I said, she's got to not be furious. She's got to be curious. And she has to put on a shield if she wants to hear what's at the heart of the matter. She has to put on a shield of protection that's made of the 2 virtues of compassion and detachment, so that she can hear what her daughter is saying and what's at the heart of the matter without taking it on or defending herself. And then at some point, she needs to be able to say what her needs are with this adult child. So I think you would find, I know Valerie Hess used to always say, whatever the problem is, virtues are the answer. It's true. Because they are this ancient wisdom, and our purpose is to make them accessible in everyday life. That's my life mission. It's the reason why I've written any of my books. So I think, how's our time, Shukufat? I don't want to go past our time. Can you tell me if we have enough more time?
You do, please.
Okay. I think I'm going to share one more piece about the beginning of the Virtues Project. You know, we had no idea what we were doing. We just took it one step at a time, and we kept following the guidance that we were receiving, really, in prayer and meditation. And we realized that we had to write a book, put together a book for parents, because they are the ones that are the educators of the children, and they are the mentors of the child's soul. And so that's why we put together the Family Virtues Guide. And some of you have the original version, which was in a 3-hole binder before we even bound the book and before Penguin bought the rights to it a couple of years later. And what I want to tell you is that so many communities of faith picked up on the fact that we were using quotes from all the different religions. And they realized there was no hidden agenda to teach the Baha'i faith just because we were Baha'is. We were honoring and uplifting all of the holy books. So some of the biggest orders came in from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They used it in their family nights. We had Catholic churches that adapted it for their entire Mass. They would base every single Mass on a different virtue, including the homily of the priest. I mean, it just was blowing my mind, because all these different faith communities, and then there were the First Nations who recognized this is our way of life. This is what will heal us to come back to our spiritual roots. And so it's a very universal project. And I want to make that clear, that this is not, it was a Baha'i inspired project, but it's not a Baha'i project. It's a universally valued project by all cultures. And the UN actually awarded us, saying that it was a model program for families of all cultures. I would like to speak about Pocatello, and Dara, please jump in whenever. Dan and I were, gosh, I want to tell the whole story. There was a murder, okay, of a young woman in the Pocatello High School in Idaho. She was like one of the most beautiful, beloved young women in that whole school.
An 11th grader.
11th grader, that's right. And 2 boys in her class that were friends of hers had been hanging out together watching these, whatever they were watching, and decided they wanted to know what it felt like to kill somebody. And so they started to plan to kill several kids in the school. And they started with her. And this was a Mormon community, and they were devastated. These were Latter-day Saint kids. Can you imagine, those of you who are Baha'is, a Baha'i child did this? It's beyond imagining. And so they called us to come and do some healing work with the whole community. And we invited Dara to come. I wanted her to work with me on this, because it was a big job to work with the teachers, the students, and then the families. And so I'm just going to tell you what happened with the kids. there were this huge divisiveness in the school because some of the children who were very close friends with the young woman who'd been murdered were furious at these boys who had been put in detention. And then there were friends of the boys who couldn't stand all the attacks that the other kids were making against their buddies, even though they knew that they had done something terrible. And so there was this war going on in the school. And what I asked for was, I said, we want all these kids together in one room. And so they reluctantly agreed to do that. And Dara and I were escorting the kids into the room, and the teachers started to come in. I said, no, we want to be alone with them. So please respect that boundary. They looked so shocked that we wanted to be alone with all these kids that didn't even know us. Well, what we did was there was a long table and they were on either side of it. We put up the virtues poster. We talked about what a virtues sharing circle, healing circle is like, that everyone gets to speak. And when they are speaking, everyone else is quiet, receptive silence, and that you wear that shield. And then you give them a virtues acknowledgement. Well, at first they're like, I'm not talking in this group, there was all this resistance. And by the time it came around to them, everybody was crying, including us. I know I was. And these kids listened to each other. They absolutely followed the boundaries that we set. And they started giving these exquisite virtues acknowledgements of their friends and of their enemies. And when it finished, they hugged each other. They felt a huge healing. They had understood the other perspective. And they got all excited because they decided they were going to have a virtues poster campaign. And they went running out to try to start having the Virtues Project in their school. It's magic, and it's very simple. And it's magic because it's grounded in revelation. That is what I believe. And it was just a fantastic experience.
May I just piggyback a little bit?
Please.
So absolutely, as Linda just explained, and I believe actually we sat in circle. We removed the table so that there was no barrier between the students. And not only did they have developed the posters, there are 4 high schools in Pocatello, Idaho. The students initiated to ensure that all the high schools got trained, and then the middle schools and the elementaries. And I don't know if Betsy's still on, but Betsy Lytle Smith and I had the honor of working with their teachers and their youth. And it was really, really healing. They had an event to raise awareness about virtues where it was like jousting for justice. And I forget what the other things, but they used their creativity. It was really, really powerful. And so that's a way to tap into their idealism, right? Is to help them to repair the harm. And so, Linda, I'd like to be able to show the video from the National Education Association of one of the schools in Baltimore, because I think it's appropriate at this time. So several years ago, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, the National Education Association came to Linda and myself and asked us to do an online workshop for teachers. And we needed some footage of the work that was being done in schools. And I have to be honest, but the woman from the NEA really did not think, she couldn't see how like the Virtues Project was all that it was and is until she heard what the students were saying. And this is just one clip from an 11th grader from Kenwood High School. And
where was that, Dara?
This is in Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore. So listen for the impact on the youth.
I personally have been fortunate enough to be on the Board of Education of Baltimore County this year. And the reason I bring that up is because I went to this summit in San Diego, and one of the key points that Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan brought up is bringing back the civil mission to school. And what he pointed out was the fact that the school systems have become so test centric that we've lost the fact that we're trying to produce strong citizens in the state. And the funny thing to me was when I was talking to my, I would say, colleagues at this summit, one of the things I said was, not even as a Baltimore County board member or as whatever other positions I may carry, I said as a student at Kenwood High School, we're already doing this because we have the Virtues Project. And with the Virtues, we're creating individuals who are caring and compassionate and who can go out into the world and use these, implement these virtue statements and these virtues and just become a better person because of it and change the atmosphere, their atmosphere. Like what the Virtues Project has done has empowered each individual, and we all have the ability to decide what type of environment we have around us. And we've decided that we want a positive environment, which is why we do the Virtues everywhere we go. And that's the civic mission. That's the mission that we should have in our school systems. That's what we really need to teach the students. We really need to teach them that going out into the world isn't about being the smartest student and being valedictorian. It's about you being an individual who changes your environment, be it your household, your community, your state, or your country.
Let the youth lead the way. Okay, talking piece back to you, Linda, to discern, looking at the time, virtues pick, be the light, Q&A, what you want to do.
Yeah, that's it. Shuko, can we consult with you, because we have several ways we can go here. Maybe it's time actually for us to open up the conversation, but we also wanted you to have an experience of doing a virtues pick and going into the rooms, but I don't know if we have time for that. What do you think, Dara?
No, I think let's hear from voices.
I think we
And
should
then
open it up, yeah.
absolutely. And if people want to stick around afterwards and do a virtues pick, you can. And we'll
Yeah.
also end with Ali be the light.
That's
Okay.
right.
So
Good.
maybe I turn it back over to our gracious hostess.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. I'm really speechless. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and it was just wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that every one of the participants, they can join me and tell you that how much they appreciate. I really, individually, I absolutely learned a lot. And as I said in the beginning, that this is really an important issue for all of us. So we have to put all our effort and energy and time to learn about it, that how to deal with youth and children. So now the floor is yours, the participants. So please raise your hand. And as you raise your hand, we can call on you. So if you go to reaction and just raise your hand, then we will call you. Any comments or questions, please go ahead.
This is Margaret, and I think I recall that there was a time where you were using this with heads of state and politicos that were at odds end with each other. Did I remember that correctly?
Yes, you did. They are the most difficult people to reach, actually, but in some smaller countries, it was very, very powerful because, for example, in in the Solomon Islands, Dan and I were invited to go and work with the interfaith circle. Most of them were telateles, ministers or pastors. And there was one man with a huge cross around his neck. I didn't even know how he could carry it. And he was very cynical at the beginning of our workshop. And then by the end, he was just beside himself with the virtues pick that we did and so on. A couple of years later, we were invited to come back and work with the government because they were told that this was one of the best tools. So we spent time with all these different ministers, cabinet ministers. And one morning we were told that we needed to go to the prime minister's office. And so a car came for us at like 6 a.m. And we were driven to the prime minister's office and we walked in and he looked familiar. And I said, "We know each other, don't we?" He said, "I was the one with the big cross." And he said, "I'm in this office because of what you taught me." I said, "Tell us about that." And he pulled out of his drawer the service card that he had received. And he said, "When I received the card of service, I knew that God was calling me to serve my country. And I gave up my church. And now I sit in this chair. And it's a big sacrifice for me." And so we started companioning him. And he said, "The worst thing is the disunity in my country. And I'm trying to use the virtues for that." And I said, "Would you dare to have another virtues pick?" He said, "I don't know." But he did. And he got the virtue of unity. And he said, "That is exactly what our country needs." So, there have been times where we have been able to work with people in government. And they have, I remember in Fiji, we were asked to come to a consultation with the big men, who are the chiefs of the villages. And they had a huge problem with the reefs. And only if the people agreed to stop fishing for a year, which is a very difficult thing for villagers, would they be able to solve the problem of the reefs disappearing. And so one of the things that I remember saying to them is, "You are the men of power in this country. You have the most influence. How will you, together with the power of your unity, establish a way forward that's going to save the reefs?" Because they had been arguing, "You can fish this and we'll fish that, but this has to be." I said, you can't solve this if you're looking for personal advantage for your own village. And so how will you do this? In unity. And you know what? They did it. They got together and they solved it, and they had everybody abstain from the fishing. And within a year or two, it was amazing as we went back and we got to see the reefs as we swam and snorkeled. I thought, oh my gosh, it worked. So there have been times where people in government have used it. Thank you for that great question, Margaret. It was very helpful to get that question. There's others, but I don't want to take too much time.
Thank you.
Dear Geeta.
Thank you. First, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much, Shukufei, for hosting this call, and for Linda and Dara for you to share your stories. To be very honest with you, I don't know where to start from, because the Virtues Project for me is like I live and breathe it. From the time of doing the training with Dara to where I am today, I will just say to you the impact it has had on me as an educator, on my own personal family, and on our Baha'i classes that we have done for over 20 years is significant. And I will tell you, the moment you understand these strategies, you internalize these strategies, it becomes a part of your life and the way in which you interact with people and having that compassion. And I just want to say that even it's for youth, it's for marriages, it's for children, it's for interacting with colleagues, everything in your life, you will automatically turn to and think of a virtue that will help you with that. So I am grateful, and I am just beyond excited to be on this call tonight. So thank you both.
You know, it's bless your enthusiasm. That is so wonderful to hear that. And you're describing transformation. And
I
really,
didn't want to take up more airtime, but I can tell you a lot of transformation.
that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Midge, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. Hi,
Yes.
Linda. Good to
Hi,
see you.
Ned. Good to see
Yes,
you, honey.
Linda and I knew each other from when we were little kids. But anyway, I just wanted to say it's so wonderful to be here again and to hear the virtues again. I took the training with both you and with Dara a long time ago, and I've always used it in very subtle, simple little ways. And if this is your first time, it's your friend. It's and it frees you because you are not responsible for anybody, and you're giving people the gift of what's inside them and allowing them to open it up. So it enables relationships to grow, conversations, and it frees you from being responsible for anybody else. And so every year, at the beginning of the year, I do a virtues pick. And I choose 3 or a couple of virtues, and I start thinking about them. So this year I got acceptance, resilience, endurance, and determination. So those are going to be the virtues that I will try to emulate with whatever life shows me this year. And just to know that I can go to these are your friends. This is your heart. This is how you become a human being, by using these gems. And I've used this with 18-month-old children and 92-year-old mother-in-laws, and it works with all ages. So thank you, and it's so good to see you again.
Oh, great to see you, Midge. I won't call you Midgie anymore. But that's such a beautiful way to express it. You know, it reminds me of one of our master facilitators who was speaking at an education conference. And a question came from the audience, you know, what is the real age that you use this project? Is it middle school? Is it elementary? What is it? And she said, there's actually only one age, birth to death. That's what you just said. Yeah. Gosh, it sounds like we're doing advertising now. But I want to tell you something. Dara and I would be happy to offer as a service to do an in-depth introduction to the Virtues Project strategies for anybody that's interested. And Dara's putting her, have you put your email on the chat box? He's doing it now. If you are interested in that, you know, and we're particularly wanting to be of service to Baha'is who are teaching children's classes and junior youth, because we feel that these strategies would really enhance the spirit of these activities and really empower the kids. My granddaughter, who's now in her late 20s from Australia, told me recently that in her little Baha'i classes, she was quite bored, except when they came to the virtues. And then she could pay attention. So that's a thought too.
And I also, while you're doing that, I want to add one thing. And Carmi, thank you for your patience. So we know about the cards. I hope my husband doesn't kill me. Hi, honey. We've created an app, Virtues Cards app, And if in your community you want to use it for teaching or something and you want some codes so that you can give it especially to youth who need it, let us know. And then you'll be able to have that as a gift and access it. Carmi, did you have a question? You've been so patient.
Oh no, it's totally fine. So yes, I did your course in the summer as well, and I really appreciate it. I have the app on my phone as well, and I use it regularly. But I just wanted to note that, you know, I've used since the summer that language of virtues with the evidence, you know, based approach, naming the virtue and then the evidence. I've used it with my own kids. I work in education. I've used it with my students. I'm a physical therapist. I've used it in relationships. And I really feel that naming the virtue, the person really takes on that virtue. It makes them want to become that. When you name what they are doing and the evidence behind it, they own it. So if you really want to see transformation in somebody, it's like praise almost. They really, you know, you can see them swell up when you tell them. So that was my first point. It works with this whole approach works. I work with special education students who are quite, you know, impaired, and it really helps them as well. They do understand those basic premises of kindness, forgiveness, determination. It takes a little more perseverance, but they definitely get it. And my question was, so in the environment, in an educational environment, I kind of feel myself as always, I'm the teacher of it. You do demonstrate by example, but I'm kind of like you said, the doctor. I thought that was a good analogy. I'm teaching it. I use the language all the time. So with the students, do you teach them to use the language, or is it just the actions?
No, they actually adapt to the language quicker than adults do. So you got to be careful. If you introduce it in your family, your kid's going to say, Mom, was that a kind way to say that to me? No, because kids, they totally absorb the language and they begin to use it. And so it isn't, once you start modeling it, they will start using it as well. And the other thing is that, you know, one of the ways, this is just a simple idea with, if you have a virtues chart or even a page in one of the books, the educator's guide or the family guide, and you want to really encourage them, you go down the list and say, today I saw you being self-disciplined when you finished cleaning your room, and I didn't have to remind you. That was being reliable and using your self-discipline. So it's catching them in the act of doing the right thing or stretching themselves in some way. But absolutely correct. But your modeling the language is ultra important, and they will. Have you found that they speak the language yourself?
A little bit. I just wondered if they use that language between themselves as well.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I've heard it many times when I walk through a school and you hear someone
Okay.
say, "Oh, you dropped your crayons. Would you like some helpfulness?" You know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of kids doing that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, one other thing is that one of the most touching things that's part of a video series that was part of a TV show we did in Canada, Virtues of Family Affair, was when a teacher was the object of the, whatever you want to call it, the virtue shower. You know, all the kids in his class were telling him the virtues they loved about him. It was all he could do not to just burst into tears. You know, so it works both ways.
Looking at the time, it's about 8:52 here. And I think we wrap up at the top of the hour. Is that correct? I wonder if there's one more burning desire question, and then we show Be the Light. And if anyone wants to stick around for a virtues pick of idealism, then we can do that. No more burning desire questions? All right, y'all have been so thoughtful. Are you ready for some more music and a way to honor the spirit? All right, then. Is that okay with you, Linda? You good?
I
Linda,
just
you
want to
were,
say that I'm thankful to Ali Yousefi for creating this song specifically for the 30th anniversary celebration of the Virtues Project. Bless his heart for his generosity.
Absolutely. And I hope that I clicked the bottom. If it doesn't sound good, tell me to stop. Use your assertiveness and make me restart. Here we go. Sound okay?
Yes.
You might recognize a few people. I know there's some stars I've seen on here.
Help me to be caring and loving. Help me to see the beauty in the world. With hope to succeed, I'll keep trying and trying. Help me to bring some good to the world. So help me to be the light that's in me. Be brave and let your light through. Illuminate the sky like the stars do. Be brave, shine through. Help me to be caring and loving. Help me to see. I'll keep trying, trying, trying. Help me to bring to the world. So help me to be the light that's in me.
Help me to be the light that I see deep within me, so I can shine constantly in a world that's so dark. I'm trying to open up my heart. Can you imagine this flame that can grow from one spark? I don't know what else to say except that today I'm living my life like this light never goes away, forever gonna make my eyes illuminate. Have you ever seen the night turn into day? It's the definition of how me and you can change. Give it just a minute, we are living in an infinite design. Isn't it exquisite? Open up the heart, the jam is hidden in it. Always time to start, never time to finish. So now is the time to
be brave and let your light through. Illuminate the sky like the stars do. Be brave, shine through. Hidden within are a myriad virtues, these luminous gems of immeasurable worth. And as we educate, we alleviate all the pain of our troubled world and enable mankind to grow.
Thank you all for your generosity of spirit, being the light and really reflecting it back to our youth. Linda?
It just was wonderful to be with you today and to share this with you and to hear your comments and your thoughts about how important it is for us to reach out to our youth to help them remember who they really are. And so I'm going to give you some homework. for the rest of your life, that every day you find an opportunity to say to someone in your world, especially a young person, I saw your kindness in doing that. Thank you for your courtesy when you opened the door for me. That took a lot of courage for you to tell your friend how you felt. So at first it seems very contrived, but as you use it, it's going to become more and more natural. And this is a way to listen, to hear, and to speak with the power of the Spirit. So thank you all so much for your loving attention and your obvious enthusiasm for virtues. It's been a real joy. And Shukufat, we're so thankful for this opportunity. It's very gracious of you to bring us with all these people.
Thank you so much, dear Linda and Dara. And I should thank you to accept my invitation and to come and enlighten us in this wonderful topic, and also important. And also, the music that you played at the end helped me to be the light within me.
Yes.
It says a lot. That means there is the light in them, in every one of them, in every one of us. And when we help one another, we bring that light out and shine to everyone, to themselves, to friends, to family. So what you are doing is incredible, Linda and Dara. And thank you so much. And thank you for offering the course. And, I'm going to email you, Dara, and I certainly would love to be part of that course. And because I teach a children class in Washington, D.C., and it would be very helpful.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. So grateful. Appreciate your enthusiasm. And look, my friend Kim Anderson holding me accountable to show you the end of the youth video. Okay, I have to be trustworthy. So here's the end of the video that we started with. And if anybody wants to stick around to, let me see if I can get to it. If anybody wants to stick around to do a virtues pick, then please do so. I would have to move it forward. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
To every generation, a moment comes, the opportunity of a lifetime to contribute to the fortunes of humanity. And if you pause to reflect,
you're gonna think of this
you will
all
see
night long.
The moment has come, the time is here. We must commit, forget all of our fears. Look not at each other's shortcomings and think not of our own. Pass by all inequities, however they are shown. Must read it from the heart, help each other grow, and live a life of service from which blessings will flow.
If you want to get up and dance.
Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world. Youth can move the world, youth can move the world.
All right. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting, friends. Youth can move the world.
Love it.
All right. So anybody, go ahead.
So those of you who are staying, would you like to do a virtues pick? Okay, let me show you what you do. Very simple. We're going to put you in some breakout rooms. There'll be 3 of you, 3 or 4 in a room. And each of you will take turns sharing how the virtue of idealism resonates with you, how it speaks to you at this season of your life. And it's about having a dream. We're going to read the card, actually, aren't we, Dara? And then, so as each person speaks, we use the boundaries, the art of boundaries, which is assertiveness, speak your truth, be open and honest. The R is for respect. You do not crosstalk, you do not give advice. You simply listen in receptive silence. And the T is for trustworthiness. You do not share another person's story after the virtues pick. And so you speak, everybody else listens, and then they're going to give you a virtues acknowledgement. And you simply say, I notice your courage in the way, whatever you saw it in them. I notice your, your self-discipline, or I notice your hope. Whatever it is that you see, I want to acknowledge you for. So is that clear? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so there's no crosstalk. It's just silence when each person speaks, and you take turns. And there's only going to be a couple of minutes each to share about this virtue. So who would like to read the virtue?
And you also have it in the handout.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Anybody want to be of service? Go ahead and unmute, maybe.
Idealism. Idealism is having a vision of what is possible and wanting to make a difference. It is caring passionately about what is meaningful in life. Idealists see things as they could be and have faith in the power of change. We put our principles into practice. We don't just accept the way things are. We dare to have big dreams and then act as if they are possible. Idealism doesn't mean that we are idle dreamers. Idle dreamers just wish things were better. Idealists do something to make things better. We make the ideal real. You want me to read the back card too?
Sure, thank you for your helpful service, Midge.
Okay. You see things and you say, why? But I dream things that never were, and I say, why not? The practice of idealism. I have a dream. I have a plan. I have faith in the highest possible outcome. I walk my talk. I persevere. I make a difference. I am thankful for the gift of idealism. It helps me to realize my dreams.
Well, thank you for your helpful service reading. So, I'm gonna pop folks into a breakout room, and most of the rooms have
It's me.
three people.
Sorry, Dara, would you please stop sharing? I think it would help.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. I just wanted to give people a last little minute to take a look and see the virtue, but that's really helpful. And if at any time anybody needs to go, feel free, do what you need to do to take care of yourselves. But we'll give you about a total of 6 minutes to share. So
It's 2 minutes each.
2 minutes each. And then
6
I'm bringing
minutes for the
you
whole
along.
time. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So click on that blue button that says join and enjoy. Did you all need help joining, or did you not want to join? You all okay? Hey, Kim, were you stuck in a room by yourself?
My partner got called to her front door, so she had to leave the room.
Oh,
So I didn't, it's fine. I just didn't want to leave without thanking you. It was wonderful to.
All right. So just, Linda, do you want to close your integration and then closure?
I guess I just want to ask, how was that virtues pick for people? Just a couple of people maybe share.
I thought it was really good. It made us, and one of the participants said this, it made us kind of dig deep in the times that we're living in.
Yes, exactly.
But we all got there.
Yeah, wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the purposes of a virtues pick sharing circle, is that, and whether you do it with your partner, with your colleague, with your child, it's a form of intimacy, really, because you're opening up about your own soul and what you care about most. So perfecting those acknowledgements is very important, because when you open up, you need to be sort of returned to yourself with a virtue. I just want to say it's been an absolute joy to be with you today, and the openness and the enthusiasm is just so encouraging. We all can help virtues go viral. That's how I feel.
Yeah. It's lovely to see you, Linda and Dara.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a long time physically, but it's lovely to see you here on the screen.
Yes, it's lovely to see you, Linda.
Yeah.
And I saw Tommy, your brother was here too before.
Yes, he
so it
was.
Good to see him as well.
I know. He's still good
Yeah.
looking.